Hello and welcome to Austin versus Utah post-match reaction, or Austin Elite versus Utah Warriors post-match reaction, brought to you by DrivingMaul. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, your best place for rugby predictions and opinion. And it's opinion that you're going to be getting this afternoon. A big win by Austin, 41-33 in what was third versus fourth in the table. So they will jump ahead of Utah in the table. So in what is a very congested battle for that third and fourth place in the playoffs. Joining me to go through all the action is Mr. Tony Ridnell, ex-USA Eagle. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. I had a good week and excited for a weekend of rugby. We got a lot of stuff going on tomorrow. In fact, there's so much stuff going on around the country, I couldn't decide which to go to, so I just stayed home. And I'm going to be going to the Seawolves viewing party tomorrow. So have a good time there. We're going to be doing a podcast with Raymond from Seawolf Pod. So really excited about this weekend.
Cool. And also, Rob, how you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Not so.
And I also will be staying home this weekend because I don't want to go anywhere near Houston this time of year either.
Oh, man.
I'm not going to follow any more than Tony.
Well, we got that test in a couple of weeks. The U.S. playing Scotland on June 16th at BBVA. That's going to be a great match. I'll definitely be there for that. But, man, it's going to be hot. You know, let's talk about the game today, right? 92 degrees in Austin at kickoff. This is your show, Paul, but I'm ready to comment.
Oh, dear me. And as I said before, these things are about one person talking at a time, and so I don't want to interrupt. But yes, so this game was definitely about the heat and also about some of the players that were missing. But straight off, I mean, Kurt Marath missing for Utah coming into this one, and he was a big loss for them during this game, wasn't he?
Go ahead, Rob.
Yes, sir. I mean, I think he's certainly their most experienced player, certainly their most experienced international, and in my view, probably their best player. And they look kind of lost in the halfbacks without him. That was an even bigger deal. I thought it might be a big deal before the game, but it was a much bigger deal than even I dreamt.
And one of the things, one of the things we talked about is his leadership, and the fact that being the older guy, the experienced guy who knows a lot, knows a lot of the boys in that of the Pacific Island culture, is looked up to as a senior statesman, and having that, missing that. It's not just his play, but it's also keeping the guys under control. They were definitely lost their heads a bit during this game, got frustrated, didn't they? As well.
Well, I think you know. Utah comes at you with that big physical game. You know, we remember the game up in Seattle a couple of weeks ago, and then last week's game, big physical team. But not, they haven't been playing with the most structure, right? They like to run with 12 and 13 and try and move it out to their quick wings. Bust up the middle, 12 or 13, and then they've got the quick wings on the outside. Those four players out are just dynamic as heck, right? But they haven't played with the most structure. And now with Marath gone, there's even less. And that was very, very clear today for me. Austin looked much more structured, was in control the entire time. And, spoiler alert on the man of the match, I think Guillermin was the difference at 10 with Marath gone. There's no question, particularly with some of those long kicks in the second half that we might call cushion points. That cushion was necessary.
It was, and this not only was it hot, but it was also windy. Was the other thing, and that played into it. So in that first half, we saw Austin, knowing they were playing into the wind, playing some clever rugby about keeping the ball in hand and trying to play out of their out of their own half, and that worked pretty well. They managed to, their ball retention was okay, and for most of the time they managed it. They did get. It did take them phases to get up the pitch, and when Utah got it right, they would basically eat all that space back up with just one phase attack, and you could tell that that's where Utah couldn't put the phases together. But when their phase worked, they got some really good breaks going.
Yeah, I think Tony used the right word, and it was structure. So Utah, whether they were playing through the loose forwards, whether they were playing through the halfbacks, whether they were playing through the Suniolas and the centers, they just looked like they knew what they were doing from start to finish, and And Paul, as you mentioned, they had a pretty clear strategy in the first half into the wind. They had a pretty clear strategy in the second half with the wind. They just, they had a thoughtful game plan that they put together, and then they went out and did it.
Which is perhaps why their first score was a bit strange, because it was an interception. So they got a bit lucky there. A good interception and running the length of the pitch, and that got them there. That got them the lead in that tight first half. And whilst you talked about Guillier having a good game, his place kicking was a bit off during that first half. Missed a couple kicking into the wind.
Correct. Yep, she sure did. That first try was, for me, a 14-point turnaround, right? Utah's driving the ball. I'll talk a little bit now about my, away win theory here. It's tough to get away wins in this league, and today was symbolic of that. I think everyone had Utah as a pretty strong favorite today, even though they were away, based on their increasing form they've been showing over the past weeks. And I think that that try really might have taken the wind out of the Utah sails. They're moving down the field, they're away, they're probably tired. They probably either got in today or late last night. Totally different conditions, and then that I'm not quite sure who made that very questionable pass, but in the professional ranks of rugby, that's completely not acceptable to make a pass like that. That was just very foolish. Just threw the ball up like it was a first-year player.
Yeah, so when I used to coach basketball, we used to call those hope passes. You're just hoping it gets somewhere good, and oftentimes it doesn't. With
the continuity of rugby, that's just not acceptable. With the continuity that's available, it's not like there's a 24-second clock. So just eat the ball and recycle it rather than make a foolish pass like that.
I'll tell you guys, I'm going to pat myself on the back. In Paul's prediction pool, I actually took Austin. And I did it in large part because of something that we've talked about over the last couple of weeks, and that's the phenomenon that Tony just mentioned of the Western teams going southeast to play in Texas and in Louisiana. And again, the weather today was harsh, and I'm not sure anybody handled it particularly well today, but Utah certainly did. So, Tony's right. Getting road wins in this league, particularly when you're the team going east, seems like it's going to be pretty difficult.
I think tomorrow will be a real tester. The Seawolves playing at Houston, I think will be a really interesting match, and I think the majority of people would pick Seattle to win this game, all else equal, moving forward. So tomorrow, I think the heat is going to be a tremendous factor. And I would never bail out on my team, but it's going to be a big challenge to win in Houston tomorrow. So just going back to this game, the weather definitely had an effect. Utah just didn't look like Utah just looked like they did not want to play. They just didn't look excited to be there.
Well, Raymond and I did our predictions this weekend, and we both went. Raymond, who's the Seawolf pod, both did our prediction show, and we both came out with 3 away wins. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pairs up with the theory of travelling down into Houston. Into Texas and Louisiana. But there were some players who did have who looked up for this game, and Luati was definitely one of those who picked up a try and also had a wonderful kick return in that second half as well. So definitely some of them were up for trying to skin a few players and show what they can do.
One of the things I noticed during the game was Utah would score. Right, so Austin was always in the lead. Right, they had that 14-point turnaround where it could have, should have, would have been 7-0. Utah turned it around. It became
13-12.
Well, it was 5-0. No, just 5-0. Yep. 5-0 Austin. Excuse me. So there's a 12-point turnaround there potentially, but each time Utah would score, when the game was in the balance, within a minute Austin scored. That happened 2 to 3 times. So Austin would score a try. Utah would score a try. Austin came back with a try. Utah would score I think their second to last try. Austin came back within a minute and kicked a penalty goal. And you can't win games like that trying to come from behind away, getting out of your mental head getting out of your mental state to let down after you score. That's where you've got to really turn in the screws. Utah didn't do it that today.
No, they didn't, and their handling let them down. And what I felt was during that first half was during the first sort of 20 odd minutes, Austin's discipline was good. They then got tired and started giving up penalties in that sort of after this about 20 odd minutes, heading up into that second half or the second quarter, and that gave Utah much more of the play. But the handling let them down, and Austin's scrum today was impressive. They were dominant at scrum time, and with Utah knocking on, if Austin didn't get advantage, then they were going to get a scrum. They were going to get the advantage from that scrum, but it was only when Austin's discipline allowed Utah to get easy meters that Utah really got that pressure in that first half, and hence why we went in at 2012. The missed kick on half time didn't help Utah. Let's be honest, they didn't. One of the things we saw from Austin in that second half was how much they kicked with the wind at their back, and Utah just didn't do that, and they left points out there. That wind was worth about 9 points in my book, I think.
Yeah, it was a big win, no doubt about it. As they got into halftime, I think it was Hermesice. If you saw the players coming off the field, I think it was Hermesice that just got off the field, just laid down on his back. This is one of the fittest guys in the league, right? The conditions just must be monstrous to play rugby at this type of level.
So I guess that's also a sign is that are those of us used to watching European rugby? We see the teams head off into their nice air-conditioned changing rooms for half-time. And we didn't, or actually.
Welcome to America, baby. Welcome to America. We're here. We're coming. We're coming. We're going to get air-conditioned. We're going to get air-conditioned locker rooms. We're coming. I promise. Well,
actually, it's a winter sport. That's in Europe, so it's more like heated locker rooms rather than air-conditioned ones.
No, it's all good. All good.
So I couldn't see it. It didn't show on the Facebook feed. But so were the players actually were out still on the pitch during the halftime?
Right as they, I don't know about that, but right as they walked off, I saw a couple of players, going to the prone position on their backs, knees up, arms spread, kind of gasping for air.
But one of the things we did say about this is the coaching, and clearly the Houston coach had his halftime message spot on, because Houston came out, got themselves
Austin.
Sorry, Austin. Oh, jeez.
Yep.
It's all Texas. Austin came out and scored two.
Down in New Zealand, you guys are just like, they're all Yanks. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Two early tries in the second half. Really, at that point, I was game over with those two early tries, and it was just about. It was only going to be about sort of match management after that point, really.
Pretty much in any sport where you get to halftime, you're just sort of on the edge of being in contention. In this case, it was 20-12, right? That first 5 or 10 minutes of the second half becomes extremely important. If you don't come out and set a tone as the team that's trailing in that situation, and clearly the visitors didn't do that tonight. If you let the home team, you let a home team who's already up 8 come out and score quickly on you, you're up against it. It's nearly over at that point, and they gave up not only one quick try, but 2 in the first 5 minutes. I think that is a recipe for disaster. That is not a way to win.
Yep, absolutely. And Putic had a good game, didn't he? With that off the inside shoulder of gone blank of Paul Lasaki. No, other side, isn't it? Of Suniola.
Right.
Which one are you talking about? Which one are you talking about?
Putic's first try, nicely off the inside shoulder of Andrew Suniola.
I think it was Andrew Suniola.
Because Roland had gone off the pitch at that point, unfortunately, right. And then Hanko made a great break, gives the ball to Walsh, who holds it up, lets the defenders all get taken out by the dummy runner, runs round and puts it down like a nice scrum half. I don't want to get touched. Let the forwards take all the contact.
Yeah, he's a nice player. There's an interesting story about him, right? So he's from Rugby United New York. and I guess he's down this season on loan or whatever. Which is a pretty cool scenario. Gets him some time, fills in a need for Austin. Maybe another scrum, maybe another 9 that would like to get in the league misses out. But it's an interesting story. These players coming in and filling in roles that need to be filled in the teams.
And this was one of the things we saw in this game was actually how is that these teams don't have massive depth. So Utah, they've had some injuries which means that there are a few players down anyway, losing their starting fly half to international duty, and suddenly they don't even have a recognised fly half on the bench. And so in that second half, we saw Johnny Lynham looking injured, hobbling around a bit, but knowing he couldn't come off because there was no one to come back on and replace him. So that's one of those areas that they're going to have to build depth in. Not only does it help the teams this season, but it also helps New York next season, because that means they'll have had someone who's played at this pace, knows how the game works, and can give that information to the rest of the squad. I think it's all good seeing the sides competing on the pitch, but collaborating off the pitch, and that's, to me, I think is what we need.
Better ultimately for New York is the guy that's getting the experience is going to be the guy that's got his hands on the ball the most. So really fortuitous that it's their scrum half that's playing. The one guy that we haven't mentioned yet, or at least for me, the one guy that we haven't mentioned yet would have been my man of the match, and that's the old South African, Mr. Vandenberg. I thought in the first half in particular, I thought he was Honko, and Honko was in his jersey, and I mean, Mr. Vandenberg, he had a try off the back of the scrum and 3 or 4 breaks. That was the best I've seen him play on U.S. soil. I can't remember if he's in Springbrook, but certainly in the last couple of years, that was the best I've seen him play.
A 37-year-old number 8 playing at this level is an anomaly. He's obviously in his prime, a world-class player. I just have a feeling in the 15th minute he knocked on that ball, and I can almost guarantee you he hasn't knocked on a ball like that in 20 years. Just right out of his hands, and I'm sure he's gonna. He'll be happy with the win tonight, but he's just going to be scratching his head. How did that one happen? But he had a very nice game, very, very nice game. Particularly, you can tell there's a leadership role that he plays in that Austin pack, and for a relatively young, inexperienced pack, they get the job done, particularly today.
Yeah, he's kind of their Morath, right? And so he's there and he's playing and he's leading, and Mr. Morath is often in the island somewhere prepping to play for Tonga.
That's right.
And as we said earlier, their scrum was dominant. Their line-out was okay, but I thought actually the Utah line-out functioned very well tonight. Previously they've had issues, but it seemed to go well this evening. And we saw a lot of cramping after those, around about the 50-minute mark, and you could tell, that the weather was starting to take its toll at that point. Shane in the live chat's got a lovely quote. He said, I think it was Mark Twain who once said, if he owned both hell and Texas, he'd live in hell and rent out Texas because of the temperature. So
I've got a question. I got a question for you, Paul.
Got him.
Dan Power did a great job on the game tonight again in the commentary booth. But he made the Queen reference, and I was trying to remember what he said, but he said Guillermin will be looking to be a queen. Will be looking for a queen tonight, or something like that. And when he went to strike the last penalty goal, I thought that one was I just thought that one was a classic. Speaking of politically incorrect.
Okay, I try and be positive about the commentators, but in this game, I'm sorry, no, they lost the plot. Saying he wants to kick like Rihanna to have diamonds was just
right.
No, yeah. And then to go on about Queen and the
that was a little much.
Under pressure song, and it was like, okay, look, come on, let's just stay on the rugby, please, rather than all these pop references. But those pressure kicks, as you say, that's what they needed. Those cushion kicks. And they were quite a long way out, but with his wind at his back, he was happy to take them on, took them on, knocked them over. When Utah were threatening to do something miraculous, and we had a lovely kick return, and exactly what they needed was to take the wind out of the Utah sails, and that's what they did. Utah didn't help themselves though. I mean, we had one with where we had the kick to Paul Lasike took on the penalty kick to the corner to get the line out. Didn't find touch, and when you do that against a team that's got the wind at their back, suddenly you find you're in your own 22 having a line out rather than in their 22 having a line out. And right. Utah were agents of their own destruction at times in this game.
Yeah, I thought you mentioned it earlier, and Tony alluded to it too, and that was, the guys that played well for Utah were the guys on the edges, Loudy in particular. The problem was they can't get the ball through enough hands to get it to those guys enough, and Austin's playing up the middle of the pitch basically and having some success with it, and Utah's trying to play on the edges, and unfortunately just didn't have the ball handlers to get it out there consistently enough.
Yeah. What do you guys know about the Utah 6? Williams, he looks like a nice player. He had a couple of nice runs today. Looked very committed on defense. Was one of the few players that really looked to be playing with a very upbeat, positive attitude in that weather. What do you guys think of that guy? Any comments?
I thought he had a very good game today. As you say, yeah, he made those breaks. And it looked like he was playing in a sort of how we've seen someone like Kieran Reid playing out wide with the wingers. Which is where,
there you go.
As Rob says, we've said is where they were making their success. A lot of teams nowadays are playing that 1-3-3-1 formation with a forward out each side, and clearly he was the forward on the left wing, working with. I've gone blank as to who the winger was out on that side, but actually with Louty, and they both used each other. I thought occasionally he could have released Louty a bit better. He could do with some better passing hands and knowledge that the fact that he had drawn in the last man and try to run over him rather than releasing Louty. But apart from that, I think generally a good game with a bit more match awareness will be extremely dangerous for them.
Yeah, definitely.
I thought the sort of the Tamalaus when they came on got frustrated with the ref and tried to do some things. Unfortunately. Because those are two big boys who could have made some done some real damage down the middle there.
Well, Tavita, of course, just signed with Glasgow Warriors. He's been a fairly high-profile American player playing in France in the Pro D2, and he's got a number of caps under his belt now. But he knocked the ball. I kind of critique my old position, right? He needs to get fit. He definitely needs to get fit. And he knocked on a couple of balls tonight. He played 20 minutes and he knocked on a couple of balls at least. He did score the try, which was what will be remembered in the score line by many people. But as again, I'm looking at this league for prospective Eagles. Guys that are gonna raise the bar to be able to compete on the top tier 1 world stage. And we need players that are going to be fit and hard, consistent with the ball in their hands, and then not talk to the referee, which was horrific by the Utah Warriors today. The talking back to the referee is just shocking, and they were very lucky not to get a player sent off.
Yeah,
call me old school there, man. But that's just not what this sport's about. Is chipping at the referee.
And we're talking about this was a professional referee over from the UK. He's an RFU referee, and
I thought he did a great job. Great job. Totally controlled the game. Marched Utah back 10 meters once, which you don't see very often at this level, which was good to see. I like when there's been back chat, and it perhaps gave Utah one or two extra warnings than he could have done. He could, as you say, we could easily have lost a player to the bin for some chat. But as a visiting referee, maybe you don't want to be the one to make that statement, right? Sending a player off in a different country or whatever, for talking to the referee, which he might not know you'd like to think that World Rugby has the same standards all over the world. I think we're a little behind the curve in the United States on how we approach the referee from the players, coaches, and fan standpoint.
I think there was definitely an element of him kind of, I'm over here. It's not as professional as I'm used to. I can see that from the way the players are playing. I'll give the players a little bit more leeway. than perhaps I would elsewhere. I think, I think I agree with that. I think he's.
He certainly had nice control. He certainly had nice control. He had nice control of the game, and he certainly was generous in allowing some players to stay on.
So there was an interesting point. So on Facebook, the referees and the commentators forget that they're actually not off air. So you actually get to hear what they're saying during half time sometimes. And one of the things you could hear the referees saying was, yes, I know they're going through. They're both going through and clearing through too far. So hey, if they're both doing it, I'll let them both get away with it. So there was definitely an element of as I say, that's why I think he might have been a bit more stricter during his in his kind of day job kind of role. And then basically,
this is an inside joke, Paul, but you shouldn't talk about day jobs in front of me. There was someone that muttered once in a position of authority that he had a day job. He had a real job, and that didn't go over well with me or many people here in the United States. I won't mention who that was, but the term day job is near and dear to our hearts over here.
I think we may have 5 minutes to have a quick little chat about some of that at the end. But basically wrapping up the game was, Utah had a go in that last sort of 10, 15 minutes, but Austin was structured enough, controlled enough to keep them at arm's length and to see out the game on the whole. The penalty count definitely sort of went up in that second half as well as players got tired, and it got more bitty, unfortunately. But that was to be expected. And I think any final players that we haven't mentioned that you'd want to call out, because I think we've probably talked about quite most.
Let me take a look here. Is it Familosa? I just don't get. I cannot get the name. I'm sorry.
Now I can't do it.
I thought Utah's 13. Tui now had a very nice game. Very, very nice game. I thought he was the player of the match for the Warriors. And then I think it's Familosa. I'm sorry, I just can't remember. Had a fantastic game for Utah as well.
Familosi,
but again, a lot of individual stuff.
You're talking about Familosi, who came off the bench.
Familosa, yes,
that's right. 22, the 22 who came off the bench. He did some very good
breaks.
Nice during that second piece as well. That's true.
Yeah, Tony's got the two guys that I had written down. The guy whose name we're struggling with, and Mr. Tuano were the other two Utah had written down.
Cool. So that was I guess and Donahoe who did the interception try as well.
The first one
we should also perhaps mention him as well. So that's that game. We will be back after the other next two Major League Rugby games. But before we leave you, Tony, do you want to have a quick chat with us about what's happened off the field? You said you wanted to have a quick chat about some of the, say, administration stuff.
It's been very interesting what's happening in the States here. I mean, we had the chairman of the board resign yesterday, vice chairman of the board resign, and there's a lot going on here. The South Africa Wales match that's going on, of course, is is a great spectacle, but it's going to be a huge money loser for the United States Union, and we've had some governance that we've made some poor decisions, and we have not done a great job on the off the field side as a union, and we're going to have an opportunity. We're going to have an opportunity to install some leadership and some people that are caring and competent and could create some titanic change in American rugby here. With MLR moving forward like this, it's fantastic. But we have our national teams eating meals on the side of a road, as their aftermatch function, and that's how poor we've been in terms of prioritizing the USA Eagle brand, which is where almost every one of these American MLR players is going to aspire to play. So the governance is a very important part of international rugby in terms of creating the financial opportunities for our players and teams to be able to perform greatly around the world. So it's just a really important time for us in American rugby. The MLR is just changed the landscape of what people think is possible now in the United States. And certainly in Austin, there might be 1,000, 1,500 people there today. But when unfortunately Austin is they're playing in Round Rock. It's 20 miles north of Austin. And I understand the Austin Huns, which was primarily the fan base, they could get 1,000 people into Nixon Lane. I think that's on the south side of Austin. So having that fan base make that ask to go 30 miles north or whatever it is a difficult ask in Austin. So they'll get 3,000-4,000 people when they move closer to the city. Houston, the same thing when they move into a better.
For those that aren't in the know, and the reason that Austin are currently playing where they are is, I think, because the other ground is being developed, isn't it? So there are plans to move, and they will be moving to other place. So it's not an if, it's a
Houston
when.
Houston as well. So we've been really gifted up here in Seattle with the kind of the fervor that's happened about the league, And of course, for many of us, even more important is the performance of our U.S. national team and our rankings in the world, and we just haven't made that a priority as a union and as a rugby government, and that we're going to have an opportunity to change that, because the global game is just as important as the youth game. It all works in a spectrum that it all works in sync with one another.
And let's be honest, if you look at around the world, with probably the exception of France, the international game is what funds everything beneath it. In New Zealand, it's the All Blacks bring in all the money that pays for everything, and then that's so. If you've got a US Eagles that are bringing that cash, then you're hamstringing yourself before you even start, and make it difficult to succeed.
Yeah, there's a lot of background to it for sure. Go ahead, Rob.
We've just far too consistently, in my view, made decisions in this country relative to rugby for reasons other than the promotion of the game. It's been because, we've got some self-interest. It's been because we've just got a harebrained scheme that we want to pursue. It's been because, we got friends in other unions that we want to bring to our shores. But the Wales-South Africa game is a good example. The idea of scheduling that at this time of year at a 50-year-old NFL stadium that really hasn't been used much in the last 25 was never a good idea. And why exactly we did it, I don't know. But whomever thought that was a great business decision was kidding themselves. And the World Cup Sevens. Go ahead, Tony.
That was this Wales-South Africa game was the brainchild of the RIM CEO David Sternberg and the chairman Chad Keck, who I spoke to personally on the phone about the game. They were convinced this was going to be two iconic rugby brands demonstrating their wares on American shores in front of American audience. And I think it really lent perspective to the fact that our leadership making commercial decisions about the game in this country, quite frankly, were a little out of their league. There was a time where Wales, South Africa would have been a big draw. 10 years ago, you would have got 30,000, 40,000 people to this game. I would have flown out for it for sure. There's so much rugby going on, though, that, I could be in Seattle for the Houston game. I could be in CRC's Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. for the Wales, South Africa game. So, there's a lot of great things going on. So the sphere of options for fans to spend, particularly their travel time, going to various games, if you're an American, if you're a USA fan, are you going to go to Houston to go to the Scotland game, or are you going to go to watch Wales, South Africa? For me, it'd be a no-brainer going to Houston. So, and it's really unfortunate, that South Africa has 7 new caps on the field and 6 new caps on the bench. I mean, that's not a Springbok team. It's really unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. And, I think everyone involved has learned from this. I hope what I'm saying doesn't come out as negative, because there's an incredibly bright future for what's going to happen in USA Rugby. This is the nadir, no doubt. These are some dog days right now. But we're going to come out of that World Cup Sevens. It's going to be a great event. It's not going to be a moneymaker, but it's going to be an amazing event. I think it'll be filled. I think there'll be a tremendous surge the last 2 weeks to fill that stadium. It's going to be a great event. Hopefully the Americans can perform well. Can you imagine if the Americans won that tournament, either the men or the women, for that matter? and what that would mean for the popularity of the sport in this country, particularly as an Olympic sport, rugby sevens. So we have an opportunity to come out of the sevens and with new leadership, an entirely new board, a new CEO with new structure, RIM and the commercial arm of whatever you call USA Rugby will probably be brought underneath USA Rugby again and not outsourced to a for-profit company, which created such conflict of interest that it could never have succeeded. And that was what I tried to bring up to people 3 or 4 years ago. With that conflict of interest, there's no way, because if people thought that this South Africa game was a great idea to compete against the CRC sevens, there's clearly a conflict of interest in terms of how we're going to commercialize the sport in this country. The last thing I'd just like to say is that we just have not done a great job with the USA Eagle brand. And as you said, Paul and Rob, it is the most valuable thing we have in the union. And that is why I'm personally concerned about keeping that brand behind the paywall at Flow Rugby and not allowing some of our larger linear partners to promote the USA Eagle brand. And that's going to be a big mission for me personally, whether it's in a governance role or as the Eagles 15 Club, major donor, founder. Those are going to be big issues.
I mean, ultimately, what we need are the folks in the business roles actually making business decisions. And as simple and fundamental as that sounds, it's the opposite of what we've had.
Yep.
Well, the time to complain though is over. We're here right now, and there's no doubt. You're not going to resign as a chairman of a board unless there's something significantly bruising, right? And there's no doubt that's been the case, and it's just taken people a little bit, various lengths of time to understand the gravity of the situation. Some of us understood the gravity of the situation several years ago, and that's. That there's no harm, no foul there. We just need to look forward and use this Rugby World Cup Sevens as an absolute trajectory springboard to greatness, and we should all be excited about what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's the point. Is that a lot of these bad decisions are unwinding now. The Rugby Channel's disappeared. RIM, as you say, is probably going to come back in. Pro Rugby disappeared. And we've got better things in their place, which is we have the Major League Rugby in there. We have Flow Rugby that won't be costing us money, or costing the USA Rugby money, shall I say. It's not perfect, but it's better than the Rugby Channel.
Right.
And as you say that, so these things are unwinding. The people that made the decisions are moving or moved on, and it's upwards from here on in.
My comment's not a chop on Flow either. Flow's done, they've been a leader in developing the brand of rugby in the United States. They show a lot of stuff that I'm sure they're not making any money on. And that's cool. They're showing the college, they're showing the women, they're showing high school, they're showing internationals, they're showing, random leagues around the world. It's terrific. It's a terrific service. So don't take me wrong that I don't think, the Flow having the Eagles is good, but we've got to figure it, and hopefully Flow will be able to do this, is create some partnerships with some linear, flip the channel type media outlets, whether it's NBC Sports or CBS Sports or ESPN or whatever it is, clicking that's where apparently there are a lot of people finding sports is clicking through channels. And if you're behind the paywall, you're just never going to find the USA Eagles. So that's an important one for me. I really think we've desecrated the Eagle brand, and we need to bring it to something that everyone is extremely proud of, and sponsors are willing to get behind. Yeah,
no, I was listening to the America's Rugby pod by the Red, White and Black Eye earlier today, and they were saying that the quality of what is shown through Flow Sports is good. They know how to produce sports, they know how to handle sports. They're not amateurs by any stretch of the imagination. They do a good show. As you say, it's just the paywall and the discovery issue that would be nicer. And I say, whereas the Rugby Channel at times didn't necessarily handle their streams that well. I say, which is why I'm saying it's a better situation than we were in 3 weeks ago, even.
Absolutely, no question.
So it's all,
no question. And I'd like to give a shout out to Alex Goff, who kind of is Flow Rugby right now, and the service that he's provided, just in terms of media, provide for the high schools, right? So imagine if you were an aspiring high school player, or high school coach or whatever, you're able to, at least you have some centralized place to be able to compare yourselves to other people. None of that would be possible without Alex Goff of Flow Rugby. So, you can say what you want about Alex, but he's done an incredible service to the game in this country. Absolutely, no question.
And if you'd like some people to host some post-match shows, then I know where he can come. Being overseas, I've never come across Flow Sports, but from what I've heard, they do a good job. It's just to say the paywall issue. Cool. So thank you guys. Any last comments, thoughts that you want to have a chew over?
Oh, no, sir.
Cool. So thank you guys. Thank you, Rob.
Will I see you tomorrow afternoon? I'll see you tomorrow afternoon for the Seawolves.
Tony and I will be back for the Seawolves, and we'll also be joined by Grant. And then Tony and I will be back for the third game this weekend as well. Do you reckon Raymond might be free? We'll see, because I think Rob's got decided that NBA basketball is
excellent.
Watch these guys.
Excellent. No, what a great. That's a great series. That the end of that game last night was just a debacle, right? Talk about as a player, situational awareness. I mean, for any aspiring rugby player, any aspiring athlete, you got to know where you are on the court, on the field, what the score is, how much time's left, and who's doing what at all times. And in the NBA Finals, for that to come to the forefront is just a shocker. J.R. Smith, absolute shocker.
Time and score. Always got to know the time.
Paul, I'll be coming at you from the viewing party at Postdoc Brewery, who's a Seattle Seawolves sponsor tomorrow. So hopefully I'll have a smile on my face after the game, one way or the other.
Well, you got to say what a great job the teams are doing, having these viewing parties for their away games.
It's great
because let's be honest, travelling to these away games isn't practical for a lot of the people. I mean, the last one that we had a chat about, you brought on one of the players' sons and his wife because they couldn't.
That's right.
They can't get travel with him to these games. So no, I think these viewing parties are a great idea, and I'm going to maybe try and have a chat with our local rugby province, see if they want to try and do something similar over here, because I think that kind of stuff and that kind of effort is what's driving is what will drive fans and create the community that will make these clubs strong.
Well, what's incredible, really, so for me, kind of having I started 47 years ago in this sport. I've seen various things around the world, just from my playing experience, and now the last 3 or 4 years really taking up, what's going on globally all over the place, and what the trends are in rugby and things like that. I've just found this to be the Seattle thing to be so special, just in terms of the way that the fans have come together. There's just something remarkable about it. I wrote an article this week about the culture in Seattle, because we were getting kind of bad-mouthed on the internet about being rude and disrespectful and all that stuff, and that's the furthest thing from the truth that's going on in Seattle. There's just a lot of love. There's a lot of love for the team and a lot of passion to win. And I think you kind of got to experience that experience. And I think when every team gets that experience, which will one day come, right? Houston's going to have 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 packed into their stadium, and they're going to create a raucous atmosphere too. And it's just going to be unbelievable. So we're fortunate to have that in Seattle for sure. Very excited about it. It's so unique. I mean, I never thought I would be at this level. If you told me at the beginning of the season I'd be doing a podcast with you with a Seattle Seawolves jersey on, I would tell you were absolutely nuts. But that's how legitimate this deal is. The deal is the MLR, and it's how legitimate it is for me. And I have my personal goal of seeing us perform in the World Cup before I die. So we got a long way to go.
Cool. And so let people know where they can find you and for rugby stuff outside of the during the week.
Who, me?
Yeah,
well, I do a blog. It's called blog.ridnell.com, RIDNELL, blog.ridnell.com. And I write on USA Rugby governance issues and just stuff that's going on rugby in the United States from what I consider a kind of unique perspective.
And Rob, why don't you let people know where they can get hold of you during the
best place to find me is on Twitter @RugbyInAmerica.
And
you do a great job, man.
And you can see that straight down below his face. We've got all our Twitter handles beneath us, so you can see where to get hold of that. And please hit the like button, please hit the subscribe button, and always up for good rugby chat. So comment down below and let's have a chat. And I'll be back for the other games in this weekend's Major League Rugby.